A Grain of Wheat, beautiful novel written by Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o, published in the year 1967. Ngũgĩ, born in 1938, is aged 85 currently, and his family belonged to Gikuyu. What is Gikuyu or Kikuyu? The largest ethnic group in Kenya. The genre of this novel is historical novel. It talks about freedom fight, movement towards independence, fight against the whites, right? And the lives of the people in this novel is discussed extensively. Setting of A Grain of Wheat is a fictional village of Thabai in Kenya in the year 1963. And narrator is third person omniscient, who knows everything. And you should know this: after completing this novel, A Grain of Wheat, author Ngũgĩ became a Fanonist Marxist, which means following the teachings of Frantz Fanon. He rejected Christianity altogether and began writing only in his native language, Gikuyu, which means he left writing in English completely after A Grain of Wheat. Okay? Before we start with this novel, you should know a few important points related to the historical context of A Grain of Wheat. Now, first, primarily, the story follows 4 days preceding the Kenyan independence in December 1963. So these 4 days are what are the action of the novel, okay? After which there is Independence Day celebration in Kenya. Kenya has achieved its independence from the British. The year is 1963, December. But this is not what the novel is all about. No, no, no. Ngũgĩ talks of past events, of British settlement in Kenya in the early 20th century, when the British occupiers forced the tribal groups in Kenya off their lands and harassed the local people, okay? And also important thing in the novel is Mau Mau Uprising. What is Mau Mau Uprising? It began in 1952 as a coalition or as a groupism of these tribes of Kenya named Gikuyu, Meru, and Embu. These people waged war on British colonial forces, okay? And they played an important role in throwing the whites out and in attaining independence. Okay, now let's start with the novel A Grain of Wheat. December 1963. Kenya is preparing for its independence from British colonial rule, and in their local language, this independence is called as Uhuru. Uhuru. Please remember, Uhuru means independence. Residents of the fictional village of Thabai can't wait for 4 days, after which Uhuru will be celebrated. However, few villagers are still troubled by their chaotic past, by the pressures of the lives they had and they are still living with, okay? They are thinking about their past under the British rule. They are thinking about their present currently. There's a lot happening in the novel in the memory. So these people remember the days from the emergency when any person could be forcibly captured, imprisoned, and tortured as suspected Mau Mau members. So during the time when Britishers were ruling Kenya, any person could be told to come, get in the prison. You are from Mau Mau community. You are from Mau Mau uprising. Okay. You see, I can easily connect with this novel because we have read extensively about Indian independence movement, right? So here also the freedom fighters who are considered terrorists, everything will be like the same that we have read about India's history for freedom, okay? Now, A Grain of Wheat, therefore, as I told you, shifts from present to past and vice versa. So let's understand this work with the help of its major characters. The story will also move. That is what I have shaped today's lecture. I will discuss the important characters, and along with that, I will move the story of A Grain of Wheat. It will make it very simple. First character in the novel is Mugo. Mugo, remember him, please. He will be here from start till the end. Mugo is an orphan who was raised by his alcoholic and abusive aunt. So he grew up desiring to be left alone in peace. The struggles of his village did not concern him. He never wanted to be a part of the Mau Mau uprising. Describing his time in a detention camp, as I told you, everyone in this novel, was either in the detention camp for few weeks, few months, few years. They were fighting against the British, right? So describing his time in the detention camp, Mugo says, quote, lines from the book, In those days, we did not stay alive because we thought our cause strong. It was not even because we loved our country. If that had been all, who would not have perished? Who would not have died? We only thought of one thing, and that was home. Understood? He actually does not care about his community. He does not, care about Kenya is getting independence or not. He just wants peace within himself. Okay, here, self versus community is discussed. As I told you, theme individual versus community. However, one evening, another character is introduced, Kihika. Kihika. Mugo I taught, now Kihika. Who is Kihika? One evening, the patriotic Kihika killed the cruel district officer named Robson, and therefore he ran to Mugo's house for shelter. He comes, they were friends, okay? They are still friends. Unwillingly, Mugo shelters Kihika in his hut. And when Kihika is assassinated, which means after this, after sheltering Kihika, Kihika leaves Mugo's hut and then he is caught and he is killed. So after Kihika is killed, Mugo becomes a village hero. Why? He helped give shelter to Kihika. Why will he not become hero? The elders of Thabai, including Gikonio, who is Mugo's friend, they all wish that Mugo should deliver a speech at Uhuru and Mugo should become the village chief after Uhuru. But Mugo does not want to do all this. Why? Because Mugo has a dark secret. Which secret Mugo has in his heart? He betrayed Kihika. He is the reason for Kihika's death. He informed the British police about Kihika's whereabouts. Understood? Understood. Easy. Now, so Mugo I have discussed. Let's discuss about Kihika. Kihika is already dead in the novel. He is remembered as the great hero of the Gikuyu and a leader of the Mau Mau uprising. Now listen to the childhood of Kihika. As a child, Kihika admired the stories of the Bible and was ready to sacrifice himself like the Christ figure for the sake of others. Quote, soldiers came back from the war and told stories of what they had seen in Burma, Egypt, Palestine, and India. Wasn't Mahatma Gandhi the saint leading the Indian people against the British rule? He had visions of himself, a saint leading Kenyan people to freedom and power. Who had visions of himself? Kihika. Kihika, since his childhood, was listening to stories about independence. Gandhi is also spoken about in this novel. He talks about how soldiers returned and discussed about their stories from war. And Kihika also has dreams of leading his Kenyan people to freedom and power. Here, theme of colonialism, of course. Now, Kihika was called the terror of the white man, okay? He actually did a lot to worry the white people in Kenya. Now, when he hides in Mugo's hut, he has this conversation, one-sided conversation, because Kihika is talking and Mugo is only listening. Now, Kihika justifies Kenya's fight for freedom by the following lines. Quote, our fathers fought bravely, but do you know the biggest weapon unleashed by the enemy against them? Which means the, weapon that was unleashed by the British against our ancestors in Kenya. What was that enemy? What was that weapon? It was not the Maxim gun. It was the division amongst them. Why? Because the people united in faith are stronger than the bomb. They shall not tremble or run away before the sword. Exactly the case like India. Britishers used divide and rule to rule us, right? That is what Kihika is also saying. Now, Kihika encourages Mugo to become a member of the Mau Mau uprising. Even if Mugo has not taken an oath, hardly matters. To become a Mau Mau member, you basically have to take an oath of allegiance, oath that you will promise never to say that you're a member of Mau Mau, even if you are caught. So he's telling Mugo, don't worry, even if you haven't taken oath, you become a member of Mau Mau. Mugo only listens passively to Kihika's tales, and Kihika leaves and promises that he would return in a week to incorporate Mugo into the Mau Mau movement. But Mugo betrays Kihika after this. He reveals his location to Thomas Robson, the person, not Thomas Robson. He reveals his location basically to the British police and justifies his act with these lines. I am important. Who says this? Mugo. I am important. I must not die. If Moses had died in the reeds, who would ever have known that he was destined to be a great man? Here, biblical reference, as you can see. Now, Mugo is saying that I will not die. To save myself, I must tell where Kihika is. And he's saying that if I will die, how will I become a great man? So after his death, Kihika becomes the titular grain of wheat for his people, because his death has brought new life into the world. This grain of wheat, when it has died, has brought up more seeds, has brought up resurrection. People will celebrate independence because of Kihika's sacrifice. Now, you should know, how did colonialism begin in Kenya? This is discussed in the novel. First of all, white missionaries arrived. They preached the teachings of the Bible with a lot of peace and humility and gentleness. Slowly, they gathered power and more land for themselves. And then they made way for British soldiers and administrators. Quote, listen to these beautiful lines. They, that is Kenyans, looked beyond the laughing face of the white man and suddenly saw a long line of other red strangers who carried not the Bible, but the sword. The iron snake was quickly wriggling towards Nairobi for a thorough exploitation of the hinterland. What is this iron snake? Train. They are talking about the train. They are considering train to be a monster who is coming not with the Bible, but with the sword, who is wriggling towards Nairobi, who is going to cut Nairobi, destroy Nairobi. For British, train is just an invention. For Kenyans, train was a monster. That's how they describe the iron snake. So after Kihika, after Mugo, the story is also moving forward, guys. We talk about Gikonio. Who is Gikonio? Of course, a villager from Thabai. Gikonio and his mother were abandoned by his father because of polygamy. His father had other wives also. So he just threw this wife, or threw Gikonio's mother, out of his house one day when Gikonio was young. So Gikonio grew up in poverty, working as a carpenter. Later, he fell in love with a village girl called Mumbi, and they got married. Soon, Gikonio was arrested. As I told you, everyone will get arrested, sent to the detention camp. He was arrested, taken to the detention camp on suspicion of having sworn the oath as a Mau Mau, which he had. Gikonio was a part of the Mau Mau community. Since he could not bear the torture, okay? He was getting tortured too much by the white officials. He thought that revealing the truth might decrease the intensity of his punishment. He forgot the oath, the allegiance. He forgot about the love for his country. No. He had too much pain, and therefore he confessed. He broke the oath. After 6 years, Gikonio returned to Mumbi, that is his wife, only to find out that she has had a son by Karanja, the rival of Gikonio. A new character enters in the novel called Karanja. Quote, listen, Gikonio greedily sucked sour pleasure from this reflection, which he saw as a terrible revelation. To live and die alone is the ultimate truth, he thought. After finding that his wife has a baby from another man, Gikonio gets absolutely depressed. He forgets his mission in life. He wants nothing. He is sad. He feels the ultimate truth in life is only to live and die alone. Thus, Gikonio and Mumbi are an estranged couple that is without love, shown in the novel. Also, along with this, Gikonio carries the guilt, just like Mugo. What guilt? Of deceiving his own people and country, right? And this takes us to Karanja. Who is Karanja? Karanja, of course, a villager from Thabai, a childhood friend of Mugo, Gikonio, Kihika. But he is the antagonist of the novel. Who is the antagonist of A Grain of Wheat? Tell me. Whites, of course, but who from the village of Thabai is the antagonist? He is Karanja, because he has sided himself with the Britishers. His selfishness led him to join hands with the whites. He worked for the British colonizers in a nearby agricultural research station called Githima. He actually did menial jobs, okay, for John Thompson, the district officer, and his wife Marjorie, okay? So, there I had written, that Mugo told the whereabouts. He told the whereabouts to John Thompson, okay? Of who? Of Kihika. right? So here, let's return. So basically, British colonizers, Kihika is working for the British colonizers in Githima. He labels books in the library and does menial jobs for the district officer, John Thompson, and his wife, Marjorie. He loved Mumbi, okay? But Mumbi chose Gikonio, remember? And later, when Gikonio was in detention for 6 years, it was Karanja who used his position and power to impregnate Mumbi, right? The treacherous Karanja is afraid of whites as well as his own people, right? He's being treacherous to both of them. Let me tell you, he belongs to no one. Karanja belongs to no one. He's treacherous. And now, when the English are leaving Kenya, this is the novel's present. As I told you, English are leaving Kenya. Kenyans are preparing for their uhuru. Now, when the English are leaving Kenya, Karanja is stressed. His power will vanish when the whites will go, right? This takes us to the next character in the novel, and the story moves on. It is John Thompson. Before colonization began in Kenya, John met two westernized African students at Oxford. Their mannerisms were west, not east, which convinced John Thompson in the moral cause of colonialism. Quote, "In a flash, I was convinced," John Thompson says, "in the creation of one British nation, embracing all peoples of all colors and creeds, based on the just proposition that all men were created equal." Here, the theme of hypocrisy is discussed. Did Britishers consider the blacks equal? No, no, no. He proved to be a ruthless officer. He proved to be a ruthless DO. He caused the deaths of 11 prisoners while taking charge of the detention camp in Kenya. And when the news of these deaths, they made international headlines, John Thompson was demoted, and therefore he started working a menial job in Githima, right, where Kihika works for him. Easy, easy. Now we are coming to the present day of the novel, which is nearing Uhuru. Remember, 4 days preceding the Kenyan independence movement. Present day. Mugo is seen as a hero by his villagers, but he considers himself to be a coward. Against his will, he decides that he will bury his past and accept the role of him. What is the role asked of him? Leading his people to freedom, giving a speech on Uhuru Day, becoming the village chief after Uhuru. He says, okay, I was the one who led to the death of Kihika, but I should bury this past. But he's very guilty. He's very guilty, okay? Next morning, he goes to Gikonio's house to share his decision that yes, he will lead the Uhuru Day, but instead he does not meet Gikonio. He meets Gikonio's wife, Mumbi. Mumbi has an extramarital child, a child out of, her marriage from whom? Karambi, remember? Now, Mumbi tells him, Mumbi is in a mood to speak. Mumbi is in a mood to confess. Listen to this. Mumbi tells Mugo that while the men of the village were detained or while they were fighting in the forest, women of Thabai were put to forced labor for several years. Mumbi even confides in Mugo that Karanja took advantage of her. Although she did not resist, in the end, she resisted for many years. But in the end, finally, when Gikonio was, getting out from the detention camp, Karanja finally cajoled her and therefore impregnated her with his child. Mumbi's confession shocks Mugo. Mugo's spirit is moved. Mugo says, look at her, how she has confessed in me, and look at me, how coward I am. I cannot confess in front of the village that I led to the death of Kihika. Mugo ultimately finds the courage to confess his crime and accept the consequences. What will be the consequence? Death sentence, of course. Listen to these lines. Mugo, after Mugo listens to Mumbi, these lines come in the novel. Mugo had always found it difficult to make decisions, recoiling as if by instinct from setting in motion a course of action whose consequences he could not determine before the start, which means he always recoiled himself. He did not want to speak out. He did not want to tell what was in his heart. He always wanted to be left alone. Who? Mugo. Okay, you understood, right? Now, Uhuru Day, the final day, right? Uhuru. I'm so sorry. It's Uhuru, okay? Uhuru Day. Thabai is singing and dancing. The celebrations begin at night. Villagers from and around Thabai have gathered and are praising the heroic deeds of the late Kihika. And they are also singing about the deeds of soon-to-be leader Mugo. Secretly, it is decided that after the ceremony, the comrades, General R and Lieutenant Koina, will arrest Karanja. Why will they arrest Karanja? Tell me. Because they suspect that Karanja got Kihika killed. Remember, Karanja was by the side of the Britishers, right? So now people are thinking that Karanja told everything to the police, and because of Karanja, Kihika got caught and killed. That is not the truth, right? However, we reach the climax in the novel A Grain of Wheat when Mugo comes up on the platform and finally the passive hero speaks. He confesses his crime that he gave the whereabouts of Kihika to the British. After this, what happens? Tell me what will happen. Silence. Silence surrounds the villagers. They are shocked, but none of them turn violent as they let Mugo walk away unharmed. Again, they are stunned by his willingness to sacrifice honor, power, and wealth for the sake of the truth. That is why he's called hero. No matter he was the one who led to Kihika's death, the hero, the passive hero, the unlikely hero of A Grain of Wheat is Mugo. And let me tell you, when you like someone, you literally want to take out all the good qualities of that person by declining all the bad qualities. The villagers have already considered Mugo a hero. They are finding ways to make him a hero again, right? This takes us to the end of A Grain of Wheat. How does A Grain of Wheat end? First, Mugo accepts his execution in the forest peacefully. He is killed. Second, Karanja leaves Thabai forever in shame. Of course. Third, Gikonio realizes that he treated his wife Mumbi wrongfully, and he begins to take the first steps of improving their marriage. And we are done. Did you like it? I loved it. It actually made me realize, the power of togetherness. Also, the power to think that you can do something and it will come to you, right? A Grain of Wheat by Ngũgĩ và Thiong'o. This is Hina from Team Vallath. Take very good care of yourself and do subscribe to our channel if you still haven't. Bye-bye.